Colombia confirms nearly 7,000 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. U.S. presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden held simultaneous nationally televised town halls this Thursday, with Trump defending his handling on the pandemic and Biden criticizing the current administration for the health crisis. Israeli government has approved the construction of above 5,000 housing units in the occupied region of Palestine. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The Health Ministry of Colombia confirmed nearly 7,000 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. The South American country has reported nearly 937,000 cases of the infection since the beginning of the pandemic in Colombia. According to the Health Ministry, 151 people died of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, bringing the national death toll to over 28,500. On a positive note, the health authority reported that more than 826,000 patients have recovered from the disease. And this Thursday, Bolivia begins the so-called electoral campaign silence as it approaches to Sunday's general election. The electoral regulations stipulate a ban on political campaigning in the final days before the elections. Political parties concluded their campaign activities on Wednesday. Carlos Mesa, the presidential candidate of the Citizen Community Coalition, claimed that his final rally of his party is the only capable of taking on the movement towards socialism, which, according to all polls, is set on the win to the election. Meanwhile, MAS presidential candidate Luis Arce noted that if he is elected president, he will focus on the country's economic recovery. The Bolivian Plurinational Legislative Assembly approved a motion of censure against de facto Minister of Government Arturo Murillo on Wednesday, thus calling for his immediate dismissal. However, de facto President Yanin Áñez has ignored the Assembly's decision. Our correspondent in Bolivia, Camila Escalante, brings us more details.
Eva Copa, Bolivia's Senate president, says that Arturo Murillo is no longer Interior Minister and that he must stop making threats. This came in response to threats that he made to deport or imprison international observers. Copa said that Murillo has, quote, psychological problems and that he thinks his power is eternal. On Wednesday, he was censured by the legislature, which would technically mean that he's removed from office, but Yanin Áñez may just ignore the body's decision. Bolivia has entered the period of campaign silence, during which public demonstrations of support or rejection of the candidates participating in this general election are prohibited, as well as the dissemination of electoral propaganda through the media. There are certain restrictions on what the media can broadcast, and it's forbidden to sell or consume alcoholic beverages from Friday until noon on Monday. The Center for Economic and Policy Research has warned that these elections may be less transparent than last year's, and most likely there will not be an Excel sheet for public download. If this turns out to be the case, it would differ from the 2019 election, when analysts were able to download these Excel sheets of disaggregated results data, and it was through doing so that they were able to prove that there was no statistical basis for the fraudulent claims of the OAS. And one final note, 3 days before the election, the foreign minister of the Yanin Áñez coup regime has accepted the diplomatic credentials of one of Juan Guaido's associates as a supposed Venezuelan ambassador to Bolivia. Página 7, a media outlet here, a major outlet, reports that the president of the National Assembly, who they falsely claim is Juan Guaido, appointed the opposition figure to the post, which is to say that the de facto government and or Página 7 believe that it's the parliamentary leader who appoints ambassadors.
Ecuador has seen various moves to prevent progressive presidential and vice presidential candidates Andrés Araújo and Carlos Rabascal from being able to participate in the elections scheduled for February 2021. Our correspondent Denise Herrera provides us with the latest details.
The National Electoral Council recently resolved that, in order to make progress with the registration of the presidential and vice presidential candidates for the Union for Hope coalition, various observations should be made regarding the identity certificate of the pre-candidate to the presidency, Andrés Araújo, and the replacement of vice presidential candidate Rafael Correa with Carlos Rabascal.
Esa decisión del Consejo Nacional Electoral.
That decision of the CNE that granted us 48 hours for that change was repugnant, and it was also appealed by someone who does not have the legitimacy to do so, in the name of a movement that is from Pichincha. This is a close person who was even a legislator of the I Believe movement and who later constituted this movement at the provincial level. That movement, the movement now.
Several events have been held in support of the inscription of running mates Araújo and Rabascal. The slogans demand a transparent process and that the progressive forces of the country be allowed to participate in the 2021 elections.
No existiría un solo argumento.
There will not be a single argument for preventing the participation of the Citizens' Revolution running mates. Not even those who challenge it can do so because that movement is provincial in nature and the candidates that it represents.
In this context, a recent letter signed by over 60 international scholars who have rejected the moves against the Citizens' Revolution has been made public.
La carta también es un llamamiento no solo a las instituciones.
The letter is also an open call to the international community. We are extremely concerned because we think that Ecuador has become a paradigm of the use of lawfare, of the use of law as a weapon against democracy. Of the 14 registered presidential running mates seeking to participate in the upcoming elections in Ecuador, only 3 of the movements they represent are registered and qualified. One of them is the Alliance of the Right that represents banker Guillermo Lasso.
Denise Herrera, TeleSUR, Quito, Ecuador.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. This Thursday saw U.S. presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden hold simultaneous nationally televised town halls. Both candidates were asked questions by voters during the prime-time events televised on different stations. The town halls came on the night when the second face-to-face presidential debate was due to be held, after its cancellation due to Trump's refusal to participate in the new virtual format, which was to be adopted following his COVID-19 diagnosis. Trump held his town hall in Miami, while Biden spoke from Philadelphia. The two events were markedly different in style and tone, with President Trump repeatedly interrupting his host and also refusing to answer questions directly, while his rival Biden engaged in a much more calm back and forth with prepared answers. Discussing one of the major issues to dominate the U.S. domestic scene this year, police brutality and systemic racism, Biden outlined his plans for police reform, while Trump refused to outrightly condemn white supremacism and even went so far as to claim he had done more for African Americans than any U.S. president since Abraham Lincoln. Meanwhile, Biden said he would demand that Trump take a COVID-19 test and for that test to return negative before he agrees to participate in the next face-to-face debate scheduled for October 22nd. And in this context, let's review the latest poll with less than 3 weeks to go to until the elections. According to a poll conducted by NBC News and the Wall Street Journal, Democrat Joe Biden enjoys 53% support and has an 11-point lead over his Republican rival, Trump, who enjoys 42%. Likewise, The Economist and YouGov reflect in their polls that Biden remains in the lead with 52%, while Trump trails behind with 42%. In the United States, early voting and mail-in ballots are advancing ahead of the November 3rd presidential election. At least 13 million people have cast early votes so far. Citizens have already taken the opportunity to vote in states like Kansas, Rhode Island, Tennessee, and Virginia. Some voters have stressed the importance of having their ballots counted on Election Day, a concern voiced after President Donald Trump pointed out that there is a possibility that the election results will not be fully known for several months. Analysts have noted that many more people are opting for early voting or mail-in voting in order to avoid crowds on Election Day in the midst of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. This Thursday, the United States Senate Judiciary Committee held his fourth and final day of the confirmation hearing of conservative Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. This Thursday, the United States Senate Judiciary Committee held the fourth date and the final on the confirmation hearing of conservative Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. European Union leaders arrived in Belgium's capital, Brussels, on Thursday to hold a two-day summit aimed at addressing the deadlock over the United Kingdom's post-Brexit trade talks. European leaders have urged the UK government to make the necessary moves to reach a final free trade deal, while insisting on the need to determine fair competition rules, even after the United Kingdom's leave the European Union single market. Meanwhile, European chief Brexit negotiator Michael Barnier noted that the bloc was determined to reach a fair deal, but not at any price, while pointing out that differences remain over governance, fisheries, and the so-called level playing field, which sets common rules and standards used to prevent business in the country, one undercutting their rivals in another. The two-day summit is also set to discuss the Covid-19 situation, environmental issues, and the bloc's relations with Africa.
Sur ce sujet, je vais être ici très clair.
On that subject, I will be very clear. There are several points that remain to be discussed and for which no solution has been found yet. Fisheries. We won't allow our fishermen to be sacrificed for Brexit. We didn't choose Brexit. Brexit was the choice of the British people, so we have to preserve our fishermen's access to British waters, finding a good compromise for our fishermen, and I'm also talking about fishermen from EU countries concerned by this issue, not just France. It's a very important point of this discussion.
A lot of good work has been done. The European Union is united. We have a clear position. We want a good deal, but not at any cost. A lot of good work has been done, but two critical issues are still open. The one is the question of the fisheries, and this is a crucial question for thousands of fishermen and fisherwomen. And the second topic is the question of a level playing field, which is crucial, a question of fairness for our companies and businesses in the European Union.
And we have more stories coming up after this final break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Israel on Thursday approved plan for 2,782 housing units in West Bank settlements, a day after it approved thousands of new units. The Israeli Civil Administration's Higher Planning Committee on the Israeli-occupied West Bank said in a statement that it pushed forward for a total of 4,948 housing units in two meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. According to Peace Now, a Israeli human groups that monitors the expansion of the settlements, the new approvals officially make 2020 the highest year on record since the group began monitoring settlements in 2012. The Ghanaian People's Party held a rally this Thursday to support the candidacy of President Alpha Conde for a controversial third term. The presidential elections will be held this Sunday, October 18. Supporters of the ruling party gathered through the streets of the capital Conakry, while opposition candidate Selou Dalein Diallo is expected to arrive in the capital after returning from a tour. The opposition party will deploy trained observers throughout the polling stations in fear that the government will restrict access to social media during the voting process. Delivering an economic recovery plan to Parliament on Thursday, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that the government will extend relief grants to unemployed people who have been affected by the Covid-19 pandemic, also the economic crisis related to the pandemic, while also highlighting the allocation of over $5.9 billion of US dollars for the infrastructure projects over the next 10 years in order to boost the economy.
The damage caused by the pandemic to an already weak economy, to employment, to livelihoods, to public finances, and to state-owned enterprises has been colossal. More than 2 million people lost their jobs in the second quarter of this year. Our economy contracted by 16.4% when compared to the previous quarter. National Treasury expects a significant shortfall in revenue collection. We are determined to create more employment opportunities for those who were unemployed before the pandemic or who had given up looking for work.
Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, two Ivorian opposition candidates called on their supporters to actively boycott the country's presidential elections set for October 31. The call was made by former Prime Minister and Chairman of the Ivorian Popular Front, Pascal Affi-N'Guessan, and former President and leader of the Democratic Party of Ivorian Coast, Henri Konan Bédié. The opposition candidates asked their supporters not to take part in the electoral events or campaigning in a move to promote a total boycott of the move. Following the sudden death of late Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly in July this year, who was set to contest the election for the ruling rally of the Republican Party, current President Alassane Ouattara decided to seek a controversial third term. Meanwhile, the country's Constitutional Council has accepted the registration of 4 candidates, while barring former President Laurent Gbagbo and former rebel leader Guillaume Soro, who were accused of playing key roles in the crisis that ravaged the country after the disputed elections of 2010.
I therefore consulted President Henri Konan, and together, as elected candidates, we decided to solemnly bring to the attention of all voters, all our activists and the people of Côte d'Ivoire to the national and international attention that the ongoing electoral process does not concern us in any way. We therefore invite our activists throughout the country to block this electoral coup that President Alassane Ouattara is about to undertake, to prevent the holding of any operations related to the election, and to implement the call for an active boycott by all legal means at their disposal. This electoral process is illegal because it does not meet any international criteria, and both our supporters and all Ivorian voters must refrain from participating in both the distribution of electoral cards and the electoral campaign.
Speaking at a press conference in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, on Thursday, the head of the Yemeni Prisoners Committee noted that the prisoner exchange agreement reached between the Saudi-backed government and the Houthi movement will continue for a second day on Friday, when a total of 350 prisoners will be exchanged.
The agreement includes the exchange of 1,081 detainees from both sides. Among them are 681 detainees from the Army and Popular Committee and 400 detainees from the other side. In 2 hours, a fourth flight carrying 110 detainees will land coming from Seyun Airport, and there are detainees from the Army and the Popular Committee who are coming from the other side. Tomorrow, the work will continue on both sides, as 200 detainees will arrive to Sana'a Airport from Aden, and 150 will leave to Aden from Sana'a in 2 separate flights.
And United Nations officials have welcomed the landmark prisoners exchange between the Yemen Saudi-backed government and the Houthi movement, while also noting there are still 47 active front lines across the country.
We hope, of course, that the implementation of this agreement will build confidence and indeed momentum by demonstrating a simple truth: that peaceful dialogue, negotiation between the parties can deliver the road back to peace.
There are now 47 active front lines across Yemen, the most ever recorded. Over several recent weeks, the heaviest clashes have occurred in Hodeidah, Marib and Al-Jawf, and in September, civilian casualties reached the highest levels recorded this year.
And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, you can join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.